Masters of the Sea, Pre-colonial Seafaring in the Philippines. Before the arrival of colonizers, the people of the Philippine archipelago had already mastered the sea. Their boats were not only for fishing and travel, but for trade, diplomacy, and war. The Philippines is not just a country of islands. It is a nation shaped by the sea. With 7,601 islands scattered across the Pacific, the ancestors were never separated by water. They were united by it. In the absence of roads and borders, the sea served as the lifeline of early societies. It connected distant communities, sustained economies, and carried ideas from one shore to another. Long before the arrival of foreign empires, early Filipinos were already accomplished seafarers, boat builders, navigators, warriors, and traders, whose lives were deeply tied to the rhythms of the ocean. In this episode, we journey into the maritime world of pre-colonial Philippines to uncover how the sea shaped the lifeways, beliefs, and identity of the first Filipinos. In the pre-colonial Philippines, the sea was not a boundary, it was a lifeline. It shaped where people lived, how they moved, what they ate, and how they related to one another. For countless communities, the sea was the center of daily life. It provided food, supported trade, and served as the primary highway across a scattered archipelago. Barangays thrived along rivers and shorelines, strategically located for both livelihood and movement. Boats carried goods, news, and people from island to island, weaving a network of interdependence across the waters. But the sea was more than a resource. It was alive, respected as a powerful force, believed to be the dwelling place of ancestral spirits and deities. Before sailing or fishing, families performed rituals for protection and safe passage. To live in the islands was to live with the sea. It was food, it was road, it was protector, and sometimes destroyer. Above all, it was part of who they were. Long before modern shipyards, pre-colonial Filipinos built seaworthy vessels using only hand tools, local timber, and ancestral knowledge. Their craftsmanship produced boats that could travel rivers, cross seas, and survive storms. The most iconic of these was the Balangay, a plank boat built without nails, its parts joined through precise cuts and secured with rope made from palm fiber. Every piece was measured by hand, every curve shaped with intent. For warfare and raiding, the Karakoa was used. Lightweight and fast, it carried warriors across the waves with speed and stealth. Its hull was built for agility, its form designed for combat on the sea. Each boat carried more than people, it carried meaning. The carvings, the shape of the prow, the symbols along its sides, these spoke of ancestry, protection, and the spirit of the vessel itself. Boat building was more than technology. It was tradition, identity, and collaboration, an inherited skill that bound generations together through craft, community, and the sea. Pre-colonial Filipinos were expert navigators. Without maps or compasses, they read the sea and sky with precision, sailing by the rhythm of nature, guided by ancestral knowledge passed down through generations. Navigators studied the patterns of waves, the movement of wind, the migration of birds, and the positions of stars. They knew how the sea behaved in every season, and how each current carried its own story. At the heart of every voyage was the Nakoda, the master navigator. With no written charts, he memorized routes, landmarks, depths, and tides. His role was not just technical, it was spiritual. He was entrusted with lives. Navigation was embedded in memory, story, and song. Each route was learned through lived experience, recited through oral tradition, and practiced through repetition. To navigate was to connect islands, people, and purpose. The sea was not an unknown expanse. It was a familiar road, mapped in the minds of those who knew how to listen. Trade was the heartbeat of maritime life in pre-colonial Philippines. Coastal barangays flourished as commercial hubs, exchanging goods not only within the islands, but across Asia. Filipino traders exchanged gold, beeswax, pearls, and forest products for porcelain, silk, glass beads, and spices. These were not isolated outposts. They were part of vast regional networks built on trust, mobility, and and mutual gain. Diplomacy accompanied commerce. Relationships were formalized through ceremonies like the Sanduguan, the Blood Compact, symbolizing loyalty and alliance. Trade was not just about goods, it was about respect and kinship between peoples. Women played vital roles in local trade, while artisans responded to demand with intricate designs, proving that economic life was collaborative, creative, and deeply embedded in cultural identity. Through trade and diplomacy, the sea connected islands not only to one another, but to a global world, long before the first Europeans set foot on Philippine shores. The sea was not only a passage for trade, it was a battleground. For many coastal communities, maritime warfare was a means of asserting power, defending territory, and honoring tradition. Naval raids, or pangaw, were launched using swift warships called Karakoa, sleek, agile vessels built for speed and shock. Warriors from one barangay would sail to rival shores to seize goods, settle disputes, or earn prestige. Defense was equally critical. Coastal barangays maintained lookout points and strategic positions. Leaders organized militias not just for defense, but for collective survival against rival raids and piracy. Success in battle elevated status. A warrior's rank, honor, and even right to tattoos could depend on victories at sea. But warfare was never reckless. It was bound by codes, rituals, and leadership. Maritime warfare tested courage, strategy, and unity. It shaped alliances, redrew boundaries, and confirmed the sea's role not just in life, but in power. In pre-colonial Philippines, boats were not merely tools, they were cultural vessels. Every curve, every carving, every ritual tied to them carried meaning beyond the practical. The prow of a boat often bore protective symbols: eyes to see danger, spirals to call the wind, and animals to channel strength. These weren't just decorations, they were prayers in wood. Maritime identity extended to the body. Tattoos marked seafarers' status and journeys, each pattern a memory etched in skin. Songs and chants passed down routes, rituals, and histories. Every voyage was part of a larger story. Through boats, people found belonging. The sea was both path and mirror, reflecting the values of strength, balance, cooperation, and respect for nature's rhythms. To be born by the sea was to be shaped by it. In every boat launched and every journey taken, the Filipino spirit flowed anchored in water, carried by wind. The arrival of Spanish colonizers in the 16th century disrupted centuries of maritime tradition. Indigenous ships, once symbols of sovereignty, were restricted or replaced. Navigation, boat building, and local sea routes were folded into the colonial system. Colonial authorities suppressed indigenous ways of seafaring, viewing them as threats to centralized control. Maritime warfare was outlawed. Coastal independence was undermined, and with it, much of the knowledge faded. But this legacy was not lost, it was remembered, reclaimed, and revived. In places like Butuan, heritage groups have reconstructed the ancient Balangay, retracing ancestral routes once sailed by their forebears. Today, a new generation is reconnecting with the sea, through history, through heritage, and through the living memory of a maritime culture that once defined an archipelago. From food and travel to trade, warfare, and ritual, the sea shaped every part of life in pre-colonial Philippines. Boats were not just tools, they were culture, knowledge, and memory in motion. This maritime heritage reminds us that the ancestors were not only islanders, they were seafarers, whose world was as wide as the waters they crossed. What part of the maritime past speaks to you the most? The craftsmanship? The courage to cross the open sea? The stories passed down through waves and wind? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear how this history connects with your own roots or dreams. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us bring more untold stories from Philippine history to life. Stay curious, stay inspired, and keep discovering the roots that run deep and the waves that carried us forward.